I made this quilt from, it's all recycled jeans, all the denim parts. Let's go this way. And you can see, where's that one I just saw? Right here is a pocket, a front pocket. There's back pockets. That not only makes it look cool, but it just adds another layer, more pockets here. People are like, what is a freezer quilt? Well, I don't know if anyone's ever called it that, but I made it specifically to be a freezer quilt. So it's kind of long and narrow because we have a pretty big chest freezer. And I had a blanket on there for a long time, but it was old, it was stained, it was time, it just looked ugly. And it was time to get rid of it. You know, and since it's right in the foyer where people, you know, our back door where most people walk through, you know, I wanted something that looked nice. So my foyer isn't mostly red and blue anyway. So I did alternate between some random flannel squares that all have red of some form in it. So the purpose of that is that's the one that stays on the freezer all of the time. It looks nice. It adds an extra layer of insulation. So no matter what power source we're using, whether we're using the solar power or we're using the public utility power, that's just going to help make it more energy efficient. So it's not, you know, so we're making the most out of that. And then in the event of a power outage, making sure, at least in that case, and I think it would work for an upright too, if you could find the best way to get it. You'd have to have a big long quilt. You want to make sure all your seals are covered, because it's the seals and usually the door that you're going to lose the cold from. So the whole idea is holding that cold in. And so I made this, I kind of measured everything out and made it so that it would not only cover the full top of the freezer, but it would hang down far enough to cover the seal all the way around. And then here's a few tips that people should know they may not think about when it comes to a chest freezer. And that is, we tend to like to use them to climb up on or throw heavy things up on when, you know, we need to get to something way up somewhere else, or we might put heavy boxes on top of there. Stop doing that. Stop doing that. I was bad at that with our older freezer. What happens if you keep climbing on top of your freezer and you keep throwing heavy objects on top of it? You're going to wear out the seal, and then you're going to make your freezer less efficient by doing that. So you got to try to keep those heavy things off there. And then what I was saying, in the event of a power outage, not only would I have this, I mean, this is made so it will fit just right, so it's still easy to open and close without having to pull the quilt off. But in the event of a power outage, and I don't know if I can depend on our solar power because it's most likely the middle of the winter when we have nothing but clouds and rain, then I throw another blanket on top of the freezer then too. Just even more added insulation. And then as far as your freezers go, more tip, making sure that your freezers are full. Now, if you don't have enough food to pack your freezers full, then you need to make sure you have something that you're packing in there. So like in my case, well, it used to be what we do, because I don't buy milk in plastic jugs anymore. I only get cartons. So I'm sure they have their own problem too. But I used to fill up the plastic milk jugs and then with water, and then fill up all the empty spaces. You can do the same thing with plastic juice, soda, whatever it is that you have, and then fill all your empty spaces, because those will freeze. And then in the event of a power outage, that will help things stay cold for a much longer period of time, or stay frozen even. And then obviously just help save energy, because the more airspace you have in your freezer, the more energy it's going to take to keep having to make sure things frozen. Things going to power on more often. So what I do now, because I end up with a lot of those gel packs from Misfits Market and from Azure Standard when I'm ordering any cold stuff. So if I have any space in my freezers, those get tossed in there. And then those work good for, we're going to run out to the property and have a barbecue. Let's pull all the ice packs out of the freezers and, to keep our, the homemade, hamburgers cold and whatever else we got in there, the homemade mayonnaise and the relish and so on. So, you can make the most out of those by doing that too. On the idea of the quilts. So another old fashioned technique people would use, they would actually make window quilts for the winter. And I think I did a video a few years ago about, how to save heat in the wintertime. And they'd make these really nice looking quilts for their windows, and people would have different ways they'd do it. Some people would make it so they could roll up or work the way a curtain does, where it would just add that layer of insulation and still look really nice. Another common thing that would be done is that people would they were special curtains inside the house. You've probably seen pictures. So where they're heavy curtains and they'd look nice, and then they could just block off whole rooms instead of heating a whole house, you could just heat one little room, and that would really save on energy that way. And it was a common thing people used to do. There's that. And then something I haven't tried, but I've seen a lot of people mention, and I know I mentioned in that video I'm talking about, is just taking bubble wrap. And I guess you can just spray just plain water. Okay. Nothing crazy on your windows, and then just stick the bubble wrap right to the windows during the coldest part of the year. And that will add a layer of insulation. And then I know some other old fashioned things were simply having shutters. That's what shutters were for too. The outdoor shutters, you could shut them. And that was one of the things those did, was to help insulate everything, keep that cold air from pushing through the windows. And heavy blankets over doorways with no door. But like for dehydrating, even though I've got I always point the wrong way. I've got my electric dehydrators here that I can run off of either public or solar power. Usually in the wintertime when we have fires going, which we just started getting where we're starting to burn fires, I typically dry stuff just next to the wood stove. Patrick built me some racks. A lot of you have seen it if you followed me for any length of time. I have several videos on these racks and how I use them, and it doesn't take any extra energy. So I know not everybody can have a wood stove. They're expensive to purchase. Some people live in places where they're not even allowed, which is crazy. And I'm thankful we have our wood stove. We've had a wood stove of some kind since we got married and bought this place. There was an insert in here, which isn't the most efficient, but it's better than nothing. Then we changed everything up and went with a freestanding stove. Then a few years later, we changed it up a little bit more and got the biggest freestanding stove we could with a totally flat top, no step top. That gives me so much more room to cook on. So, as I started realizing, wow, I can make so much more use of this wood heat, whether you're buying the firewood or you're getting it yourself. If you're getting it yourself, it still costs money because you got fuel, and then you've got your time. It's got to be worth something. And then you've got your labor. And then if you're buying it, well, you're buying it. So it still costs money. The nice thing about a wood stove is you can use it when there's no power, and you can make the most of it. Not that you can't do that with your electric heat, oil heat, or whatever it is you have. You can still find ways to make the most of it. But with this, we hung a couple of clotheslines. They've been there for like 25 years, 30 years. I don't know how long now, in the living room right in front of the wood stove, since it's raining most of the year here. Right. I do have clotheslines outside that I use, but most of the year it's pointless. Hang it out so they could just get rinsed out more by the rain. But yeah, so I utilize it for drying my clothes. I utilize it for drying food, and I utilize it for cooking, keeping a pot of water on at all times so I can use that wash dishes with. Even if there is no power outage, I can still save money by using that instead of relying on the hot water from the tank. That's relying on electricity, public electricity. So, and for those of you who are new that may not realize, we do have solar power. We have a pretty good solar setup, but we live in rain country. We live not far from the whole rainforest. We get 120 inches of rain average. That's a low average. And annually, it's very wet. That means we have almost constant cloud cover. We can use it during the winter. We just cannot use it for much. And I try to conserve it because we never know when our power is going to go out, because it goes out all the time around here. bye.